So today we are talking about AuDHD and the freeze response. That maddening space where your brain says go and your body says, I have reviewed your request and I will not be moving forward at this time. We are going to talk about task initiation, autistic inertia, cognitive disengagement, transitions, overwhelm, nervous system protection, and the enormous gap that can exist between intending to do something and actually beginning it. Because the problem is not always that you don't care. Sometimes your brain is trying to cross a bridge that has no ramp, no sign, no lighting, and one raccoon in a hard hat yelling, just figure it out. So, welcome back to Authentically ADHD. Let's get into it. I'm Carmen, and before we begin, I want to give a quick little clarification. AuDHD freeze response is not a formal medical diagnosis. I'm using it as an everyday umbrella term for several different experiences that can look similar from the outside, like trouble initiating, getting stuck in inactivity, difficulty switching out of activities, or switching tasks in general, mental fog, shutdown, uncertainty, overwhelm, and sometimes a genuine defensiveness. And like a genuine defensive freezing response under actual stress. Not every moment of being stuck means that your nervous system believes that you're being chased by a bear. Sometimes the bear is an email. Sometimes the bear is deciding which container the leftovers go into. Sometimes there is no bear. There are simply 17 tiny cognitive steps hiding inside the task or in one trench coat. This episode is educational and is not substitute for individualized medical or mental health care. Now that responsible adult disclaimer has been completed, let's talk about why you have been sitting in your parked car for 23 minutes, even though you genuinely want to go outside. Because I know you relate to that, because I sure do. So there are days when I can create, organize, teach, research, write, record, solve other people's problems, and somehow remember that somebody needs to bring paper towels. And then there are days when brushing my teeth feels like I've been selected to compete in an Olympic event, one for which I did not train for. And the confusing part is that I still know how to brush my teeth. I've not forgotten the ancient dental ritual. I understand the toothbrush. I recognize toothpaste. I remain broadly supportive of preventing cavities. And I also have a huge aversion to going to the dentist. But knowing what to do and being able to begin doing it are not always the same neurological process. And this is the big part that people often miss. They think that if you can explain the task, then you can do the task. If you did it yesterday, you can do it today. If it matters to you, you will make yourself do it. If you're scrolling on your phone, clearly you have the energy. I'm just going to use one of these examples. If you can explain the task, you can do the task. Tell me that you can explain this new now to your child who's in primary school, elementary school, is whatever. And then that means that you can also do it. Just something to chew on. Because AuDHD functioning is not a single gas tank. I may have energy for something familiar, regulating, interesting, repetitive, or immediately rewarding, while having almost no accessible activation for something vague, emotionally loaded, sensory heavy, interrupted, or composed of too many invisible steps. This is why I can sometimes write 3,000 words about executive functioning, initiating the laundry, oh wait, no, washing machine, dryer, but apparently the research has become self-aware. And when this happens repeatedly, it starts to change how you see yourself. You stop saying, I'm having trouble initiating, and you start saying, I'm irresponsible. You stop saying, oh, my system is overloaded, and you start saying, I just ruin everything. You stop saying this task needs more structure and you start saying, I need to become a completely different person. That's the real damage. It's not only the unfinished tasks, it's the identity you build around every moment your body could not follow your intentions. So let's name the pattern here. We're going to separate some of the experiences that can hide underneath the word freeze because you cannot build the right ramp until you know which side of the bridge you're standing on. So the first one is task initiation difficulty. This is the gap between deciding to act and actually like acting and producing into useful action. You know it needs to happen when you care deeply about it. The command does not seem to travel cleanly throughout the movement. Executive function support skills such as holding goals of mind, planning, and inhibiting computing behaviors, shifting attention, and organizing action. ADHD is associated with executive functioning differences, although the profile varies significantly between people, and it cannot be reduced to one universal deficit. So task initiation is not simply, do I understand the task? It also might require selecting a starting point, suppressing whatever you are currently doing, tolerating uncertainty, estimating your effort, remembering the goal, generating enough activation, and physically transitioning into actual action. That's a lot of neurological paperwork just to open Microsoft Word. The second one is something called autistic inertia, and I have to be honest with you, this has been something that has interested me for quite a while now, and is one of the things that I read about that actually made me become more solidified in my self-autistic diagnosis. So, autistic inertia is a term used to describe difficulty starting, stopping, or changing activities. In firsthand research, autistic adults describe getting stuck in states or activities in ways that do not feel fully voluntary. Participants reported difficulty initiating wanted actions as well as difficulty stopping once they had begun. Later qualitative research similarly described that inertia, it described inertia as both disabling and at times helpful because the same persistence that makes switching can be difficult. The same persistence that makes switching difficult can support deep engagement and sustained focus. This matters because autistic inertia is not like a fancy name for like procrastination or something. You might be unable to start something you genuinely want to do. You also may be unable to stop something that is no longer enjoyable. You could be exhausted, hungry, uncomfortable, and fully aware that you should go to bed while remaining attached to the current activity as though someone has glued your consciousness to it. And this issue may not be motivation in the ordinary sense. It may be changing states. That's the true thing behind that transition, which is the autistic side of transitioning. Research on autistic cognition has found differences in cognitive flexibility at the group level, although there's substantial variation among autistic people. An EEG study examined task switching, and it also found differences during the preparation of intended action, suggesting that the difficulty may sometimes arise before action itself rather than from the inability to perform it once we're away. In other words, the engine may run beautifully once it turns over, but the stutter is just kind of random and it doesn't start all the time. And number 3 is the transition friction, which kind of goes along with autistic inertia, but it's different. Because sometimes the problem is not the latest task, it's leaving you the current one. To take a shower, you have to stop scrolling. To go to bed, you have to stop watching a show. To leave the house, you have to exit the protective ecosystem you've built around yourself. To begin work, you must release whatever your brain is already building, and every transition contains a tiny little ending. And for an autistic nervous system that turns into predictability, continuity, or deep immersion. Even a positive transition can require significant cognitive and emotional energy. This is why just do it now often fails because there's no runway, no warning, no closure. Someone simply opened the airplane door and shouted transition. Then there's another topic that not a lot of people know a ton about, cognitive disengagement. Cognitive disengagement syndrome, or CDS, is a research term for a group of experiences that may include mental fog, slowed thinking or behavior, excessive daydreaming, confusion, and difficulty remaining mentally engaged. It was previously called sluggish cognitive syndrome, which sounds less like a clinical construct and more like something my choir instructor would diagnose after catching me staring out the window, daydreaming. Anyway, research increasingly treats CDS as distinct from, but often overlapping with ADHD and attention. It's not currently a standalone diagnosis in the DSM-5, and it is not simply another word for laziness, task avoidance, or autistic inertia. Adult studies have found associations with functional impairment as well as sleep problems, anxiety, depression, and stress. Cognitive disengagement may feel like I cannot get my brain online. I'm technically awake, but only in like the legal sense. My thoughts are moving through pudding. I keep disappearing inside my own head. This matters because a person experiencing cognitive slowing or mental fog may need a different intervention than someone who is intensely focused and unable to switch. One needs ignition, and the other might need an exit ramp. The next one is overload or shutdown. Sometimes when your task freeze is happening, it's because your brain system has exceeded its capacity. The room is noisy, your clothes feel wrong, three people have asked you questions, you've been asking all day. You're hungry but can't identify what sounds tolerable to eat. You miss the invisible point where slightly dressed became my entire nervous system, as close to the customer service desk. And at this point, adding pressure does not create capacity. It consumes what little capacity actually remains. The next one is threat-based freezing. Humans can also show genuine freeze response under perceived threat. Freezing is a defensive state involving changes in motion, movement, attention, and autonomic activity that can help an organism assess danger and prepare for action. But we need nuance here because not every unfinished chore is a trauma response. Sometimes therapy language gets stretched until forgetting 5 bananas becomes evidence that your ancestors feared abuse. Still, tasks can become associated with threat. An email may represent conflict. A bill may represent financial fear. Cleaning may be tangled with the criticism from childhood. Making a decision may carry memories of being punished for choosing incorrectly. Beginning a creative project may expose you to judgment. The nervous system does not only respond to physical danger, it can respond to anticipated shame, failure, uncertainty, conflict, sensory pain, or social rejection. Acute stress can also interfere with working memory, cognitive flexibility, and other prefrontal functions. And that means that the more aggressively you shame yourself for being stuck, the less access that you are going to have from the very cognitive skills that are required to become unstuck. Yes, this is how contradictory we are. Is that we shame ourselves so much that we're giving ourselves less access to the skills that are required to become unstuck. Shame walks into the control room, smashes all the buttons, and then demands to know why productivity is decreased. A flawless management strategy. You can't. Here is the brain body part of it. So because this is where, let's talk about the intention action gap, because this is where so many AuDHD adults begin questioning their character. You can possess knowledge, desire, values, intelligence, and a clear understanding of consequences while also still struggling to produce action at the required moment. Intention is not the same as activation, and caring is not the same as initiating. Ability is not the same as access. That is the distinction. It's the distinction. That's everything. Executive functions are also not context sensitive, okay? Executive functioning is not a personality trait you either own or do not own. It's a group of cognitive processes that can fluctuate, and they fluctuate depending on sleep, stress, sensory load, emotional state, task clarity, novelty, physical health, medication effects, emotional and environmental demands, and available support. Autistic adults frequently report greater executive function difficulty in everyday life than may be detected through structured laboratory tests, and that mismatch is important because a quiet, clearly explained experiment does not necessarily reproduce the chaos of preparing 3 children for school while the dog vomits and your phone is ringing. The laboratory rarely includes a mysterious, sticky substance on the kitchen counter, and real life has way more variables than these studies. ADHD activation is not only about importance. ADHD is often treated as though it means that a person cannot pay attention or doesn't care, but many people with ADHD can actually pay intense attention under certain conditions. The more accurate question is what helps this nervous system allocate attention and effort here and now? ADHD research also includes both executive control and motivational reward processing models. Delayed rewards may have less influence on behavior for some people with ADHD, while immediate interest, urgency, novelty, competition, social pressure, or visible consequences can create stronger activation. ADHD is also heterogeneous. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. I tried so hard. So don't make fun of me. But anyways, no single motivation theory explains everyone's experience. It's basically what that means. This helps explain why you make more a task for 11 days and then complete it in 17 minutes when the deadline begins breathing directly down your neck without breath. The deadline did not magically give you morals. It gave the task immediacy, structure, and enough stimulation to make it neurologically available. Unfortunately, manufacturing small prices every time you need to complete paperwork is rough on the cardiovascular system and everyone who shares a home with you. So we do need safer ignition systems. Check out the 2 different AuDHD menus that I have for building a life that doesn't eat you alive when you have ADHD. The autistic brain may prioritize continuity. For many autistic people, continuing an established state may require less reconfiguration than switching to a new one. The current activity is already loaded, the sensory environment is known, the rules are active, your attention has formed a shape around it, and switching tasks may require dismantling that entire configuration and assembling another one. From the outside, that just may look like stubbornness, but inside, it may feel more like attempting to move a sleeping cat without disturbing the entire household. The cat is your attention, the household is your nervous system, and the cat has claws. Ambiguity also raises the entry cost. Consider the task: clean the kitchen. That's not one action. That is a suspiciously vague collection of decisions. Where do I start? Are we washing the dishes first? What about the food on the counter? Do I need to empty the dishwasher? Where does this random charger belong? Should I wipe the cabinets? Am I cleaning or am I organizing? How clean is clean? What if I find another task? Why is there tiny plastic dinosaur in the silverware drawer? Has he always lived here? Now I have questions. An ambiguous task forces the brains to build instructions while performing them. For someone who's already struggling with working memory, sequencing, prioritization, and/or decision making, cleaning the kitchen is not one task. It's a literal escape room. Perfectionism can also block movement here. The perfectionistic brain says we should wait until we can do this properly. Meanwhile, properly is booked until 2037. The body also may need to move first before the mind agrees. So we often have to try to think ourselves into action. We try to negotiate, lecture, make promises, explain consequences. But sometimes the first step must be bodily rather than cognitive. Feet on the floor, unclench your jaw, shift positions, turn on the light, pick up an object, walk to the doorway. Not because movement magically cures executive dysfunction, but because changing the physical state can provide new sensory and environmental cues. You're not completing the task. You're changing the conditions under which initiation might become actually possible. So let's talk about what this looks like in real life. Let's start with one that I know you probably relate to because I know I do. Parked car freeze. You arrive home. You know you need to go inside, but the car's quiet. The temperature is controlled. Nobody's asking anything of you. Inside the house are people, animals, clutter, decisions, and the possibility that someone will say your name before you have even removed your shoes. So you sit, you scroll, you listen to the same song twice, three times, maybe five. You feel ridiculous because the front door is approximately 14 feet away, but distance is not the issue. The issue is crossing from one nervous listening environment to another. Now let's talk about the shower freeze. Oh, I know this one so much. You want to shower. You may even feel uncomfortable because you have not showered. You may even smell yourself because you have not showered and you know you need to shower. Showering means choosing clean clothes, tolerating temperature changes, becoming wet, dealing with wet hair, navigating textures, drying off, remembering every product, and accepting that the entire event will take longer than the shower itself. When someone says it only takes 5 minutes, they're just counting the water time. They have failed to include the pre-shower summit and the post-shower reconstruction and the ceremonial period of sitting on the bed in a towel, questioning the nature of your existence. Honestly, the email freeze. You need to answer one email. Email contains one question. The answer requires a decision. The decision may disappoint someone. You do not know what exact tone you need to use. Now, the email is no longer an email. It's a small legal proceeding. You open it 6 times, read it, feel a jolt of dread, close it, and tell yourself you'll do it later. You forget. You may have not forgotten. You may have remembered it continuously with intensity, smoke alarm. But yeah, the hunger freeze. You're hungry. You know food would help, but choosing, preparing, smelling, chewing, and cleaning it all up requires energy you do not possess. There's no changes. The shredded cheese remains the most emotionally available candidate. So eventually you become so hungry, your executive function drops further. Now the brain is responsible for solving the food problem. It's been weakened by the food problem. Beautiful system. No notes. The bedtime freeze. You're tired. Your eyes hurt. Your eyes may actually not even be staying open. You're no longer enjoying what you're watching, and you actively actually want to sleep. But bedtime requires the ending of a current state and beginning several small tasks. Stand up, turn step off, take meds, brush teeth, change clothes, check doors, adjust blankets, tolerate your thoughts that become louder. So you remain on the couch until exhaustion becomes stronger than the transition friction. So then you go to bed furious with yourself for being tired, and now it's too late. So let's talk about why discipline is the wrong tool. Discipline can help people repeat behaviors when the path is already accessible, but discipline cannot reliably compensate for the missing entry point. If someone is standing at the bottom of the staircase, encouragement may help them climb. But if the staircase begins 6 feet in the air, Yelling, try harder is not coaching. It's architectural denial. When AuDHD adults ask for help, we are often handed strategies designed for unwillingness, consequences, stricter expectations, lectures, guilt, removing enjoyable activities, or reminders that other people manage to do it. But initiation difficulty is not necessarily a refusal, maybe an access problem. The question is not, how do I force myself? The more useful questions are, what is creating the friction? What state am I currently in? What does the task require that I do not presently have? Can I lower the entry cost? What cues, structure, support, or sensory adjustment would make this first movement easier? And this is not letting yourself off the hook. This is installing a hook that you can actually reach. Glasses are also an environmental support, and I also wear those. And let me tell you, nobody ever tells a nearsighted person, you saw that sign yesterday. Just apply yourself. Try seeing harder. All right. Last but not least, build a ramp. And we're actually going to use the word ramp because you do not need a larger lift. You need an accessible entrance. So spell out the word ramp, get a piece of paper, write it down if you want to, and write down the letters RAMP down the left side of your paper. R is for regulate. Regulate before you reason. Before solving the task, check your state of body. Ask, am I hungry, thirsty? Do I need to use the bathroom? Am I too hot or cold? Is the room overstimulating? Or is my clothing bothering me? Am I holding my breath? Do I need to unclench my jaw? Have I been socially performing all day? Is my body asking for movement, pressure, quiet, or rest? You don't have to achieve perfect regulation. This is not realistic as an entry requirement. We are simply trying to reduce the unnecessary static. So try one small state change. Put both feet on the floor, stretch your hands, lower the lighting, put on headphones, sip on something cold, eat a low effort snack, use a weighted blanket, stand outside for 60 seconds, shake your body out, play a song. The goal is not to become calm enough to deserve productivity. The goal is to give the nervous system one signal that conditions are changing. So the next one is A, R-A-M-P, and A stands for aim smaller than your pride prefers. Your first step is still probably too large. Take a shower, work on the report, clean the room. These are too large. Find the first visible physical action, not the first chapter, not the first completed section, not the first movement. So, for example, put the towel in the bathroom, open the document, type the date, carry one cup to the sink, put the medication bottle beside the water, place the shoes by the door, find the phone number, open the email without answering it, put one piece of trash in the bag, sit on the floor beside the laundry basket. Your brain might say that is too small to matter. Your brain is being dramatic. Small actions change the task from theoretical to active. And the goal here is not to finish, it's to start. It's to create evidence of motion. That's the hardest part, right? So with the ridiculous first step goal, make a rule about it, right? The first step feels faintly insulting. You want to make it so small that it feels literally insulting. So instead of do 15 minutes of yoga, try put it on the floor. Instead of write the introduction, try open the document and type a terrible sentence. Instead of clean the kitchen, throw away one thing that is unquestionably trash. Unquestionably, it's important. We are not beginning with the mail pile. The mail pile contains legal, financial, sentimental, possibly supernatural material. Start with the empty wrapper garbage. Letter M, make the path visible. AuDHD brains often struggle when the instructions exist only inside of our head. Externalize the sequence. Write 3 steps, not 38. 3. For example, shower ramp, put clothes on, turn on water, or put clothes and towel in bathroom, not put clothes on. 1. Put clothes and towel in bathroom. 2. Turn on water. 3. Get in. The rest of the routine may become more available as once the state changes. An email wrap can look like 1. Open email. 2. Write 1 sentence answer in notes. 3. Paste. Review once. Send. A leaving home wrap can look like 1. Shoes. 2. Keys and phone. 3. Cross the doorway. A bedtime wrap could look like pause the show, take nighttime medication, move to the bathroom. You could use sticky notes, visual checklists, objects placed in your walking path, alarms labeled with the actual action of what you need to do, voice notes, baskets organized by routine or the launch pad near the door. A reminder is often too big, so an alarm that says bedtime, that also might create dread. But an alarm that says put meds beside water gives the brain a concrete movement to do. So make the cue to point to the next action instead of the entire, moral burden of adulthood. Leave yourself a restart receipt. When stopping a task, write down what you just completed, where you stopped, and the next physical action. For example, I entered the expenses through June. Next, open the July statement and enter the first transaction. This reduces reconstruction when you return. You're leaving breadcrumbs for future you. Future you is not incompetent. Future you simply did not intend on meeting currently. For future you is not incompetent. The future you is going to appreciate past you for leaving those breadcrumbs because they're not going to remember. Letter P in REP. Provide external ignition. You may need something outside the task to help your nervous system engage. That is not dependence. Human brains are responsive to context. So possible ignition sources could include a body double, a transition soundtrack, a countdown with consent, or racing the timer. I personally love that one. Using novelty by changing your location, using a different pen, working at a library, sitting on the floor, or giving yourself an immediate reward, or pairing the task with something available, a drink, a podcast, pleasant texture, sticker, or scent, candle, incense. The reward does not have to be expensive or profound. Your nervous system is not asking for a yuck. It just needs a little bit more of that dopamine boost because of the way the brain's work. You also need to give yourself permission to stop. Tell yourself, I'm allowed to stop after the first step. This lowers the perceived cost of the beginning. And sometimes you will stop, and that counts. And sometimes momentum will carry you further, and that also counts. You're not building trust. We are not tricking the brain into 12 hours of unpaid labor, okay? Even just every tiny start secretly becomes an obligation to finish the entire project. Your nervous system will eventually recognize the scan. So I have a couple match the tools to the type of stuff. So before using strategy, ask yourself, am I unable to start? Am I unable to stop or switch? Am I mentally foggy or slowed down? Am I overloaded? Am I afraid of something? Do I just simply not have the capacity today? And once you get your answer to that question, you will be astounded at the answer of why are you unable to start. It could include needing transition warnings, reducing decision making, leaving the room, or canceling or deferring something non-essential, asking yourself what you're afraid of, things like that. So let's talk about creating a personal freeze map. for yourself. You know, after this episode, choose one task you repeatedly freeze around, not your entire life. We're not renovating the whole neurological property today, but just write down the task. Example, answering work emails. Next, what happens immediately before the freeze? Answer the question. Do you see several unread messages? You don't know what to answer first. Do you expect conflict? 3, what type of stuff is this? Initiation, switching, cognitive fog, overload, uncertainty, fear, loquacity, or combo platter? Number 4, what is the smallest visible action? 5, what support reduces friction? 6, what is the stopping point? 7, what will help me restart later? This is your ramp. It doesn't have to look impressive. Ramps are rarely glamorous. If you actually think about it, ramps are actually the least glamorous part of building. They are still the part that make entry possible for a lot of people. So let's talk about what this support should actually look like. If you love, live with, teach, supervise, or support an AuDHD person, please hear this. Repeating the demand more loudly does not make it more clear. Listing every unfinished task does not create sequencing. And saying it's easy usually translates to, this is easy for my nervous system, so I have decided yours is being theatrical. So instead, try, would a written first step help? Do you need less input before we continue? Which part feels unclear? Are you stuck starting or stuck switching? Support should reduce the cost of access without removing the person's autonomy. Do not take over unless they ask. Do not infantilize. Do not turn every difficult moment into a lecture about coping skills. Sometimes the most regulating thing another person can say is, I believe you're trying the best you can. Let's make the doorway easier to find. There's a particular grief in wanting to move and not being able to make yourself move. It's lonely because other people see the stillness. They don't see the effort that happens underneath it. They don't hear the commands. They do not feel the panic rising as time passes. They do not witness you trying to pull yourself across a gap between intention and action, using nothing but self-criticism and increasingly specific threats. They see someone sitting. You experience someone fighting, and after years of being misunderstood, you may be treating yourself like every adult who ever accused you of not trying. You stand over your own nervous system with crossed arms. You call it lazy. You call it ridiculous. You remind it of consequences that it already understands. But your body is not a disobedient employee. It is not withholding productivity until management improves the benefits package. It's a living system attempting to navigate attention, sensation, movement, memory, and safety all at once. Sometimes it just needs you to stop turning a neurological traffic jam into evidence that you are a bad human being. Okay? So, remember, you are not broken, you are not lazy, and you are not secretly failing at adulthood. Your nervous system just might need a clearer entrance. So until next time, stay authentic, be gentle to your brain, and we will talk soon.